Numbers in Excel are not always numbers. We will discuss a few examples that you have to fix. Column A has numbers, but column C, it looks like numbers, but they are not numbers, so you can't sum them. Another situation, here we have numbers, but someone attached units of measurements to it, so you have to fix it. Another situation, here we have certain values, but when you calculate the standard deviation, you get an error message here because there is only one observation, so you can never calculate the mean of the standard deviations for this sample or for this population. And then we have another situation here that if you leave these cells empty, it's okay, but if you put a 0 in there for whatever reason, you get into trouble. If you put NA in there, that's fine. But if you put the formula NA in there, and I will tell you why you would want to do that sometimes, then you get problems again, so you can never mean the means. So we need to know much more. I will explain the basics. So if you want a total here, the shortcut for that is Alt equal sign, and it will automatically total everything. But here that did not work, because these are not numbers. You can see it in Excel because they are left aligned. That means Excel considers them text. How do you ever get that? If you get information from DBase, from Lotus 123, or from a mainframe computer, you very often get text numbers. How do you change them? It's not as easy as you think. So if I select that column and I copy it, Control C. Some people think if I paste them in here as values, let's do that, paste special, the values, it's not going to solve the problem. It's still left aligned and the sum is still not correct. So there are at least two solutions. One is use the value function of the cell to your left. Control Enter, so you stay in that cell, and copy that formula down with a double click. These are real numbers now, so I can do at any time Alt equal sign, and it sums them. Another solution is to use a trick on these numbers. I don't like this solution because you have a second column and then you have to delete column H, and then you have to, before you do that, you have to replace these with values, so it's very involved. A trick is much better. We are going to multiply these numbers by 1. That forces them into a number. So you have to say to the computer somewhere, I want 1. I'm typing it anywhere. Copy it, Control C, highlight all those cells, and paste that into there as a multiplication. Paste special, multiply. I'm making sure that I just do the value, for if you have decimal points in column L, you don't want to change that into no decimals. And at the moment you do that, everything automatically becomes a number. Alt equal sign. Now we go to a more complex situation. In this case, never calculate with these numbers because Excel considers them text. So I have to get the number out of there. You can do that with a formula or with VBA. Formulas are always clumsy in this kind of case. I think awkward one. There are many other solutions, but they are either more awkward and they have always some drawbacks. For instance, they cannot handle decimal points like these two. And if you ever want to use it, that's what we did. I have it right in here. And I copy that formula down with a double click. And it does everything beautifully. It can handle even this kind of situation. It can handle spaces. It can handle decimal points, everything. Would go for a VBA function. So I am going to VBA Alt F11. I insert in there a module. I did that already. And I'm going to start a function. I called it extract numbers. it needs one argument and return a double, so you can calculate with it. Then I declare a few value type variables. I loop for I equals 1 to the length of S text. Take the middle part of S text at position I, that is 1, so 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4, 1 character long, store that in S characters, select the case S characters, the case 0 to 9, then we want to add that character to S num. It starts as an empty string and then the first one, so in this case it would be. Then it will also include a decimal point and the rest do not add to that number. Then at the end you return that number through the name extract numbers. Make sure that you change S number in C double, for we return doubles. So all I have to do now is start that function there, equals extract numbers. And when you tab and you want to know how many arguments do I need, you can always use a shortcut, Ctrl-Shift-A, and it shows you how many arguments that function has that you just created. In my case it only needs one, it's that number. Ctrl-Enter, and it does a beautiful job and pretty quick. It handles all the situations that the previous clumsy formula could handle. I personally find VBA always much cleaner. So it's clear by now that this kind of numbers are not numbers. So if you ever want to convert meters into yards, and you want to do that with a function, you have to make sure that this is a real number. I can only do that if that cell has 157 in it and not 157M. So how did I get all these M's in there? Don't type them. So you just make that a format, and that format should be a custom format. Custom. And then you type in that box a 0 for the numbers, and then double quotes, M double quotes. It will automatically add the M, but as a format issue, it will not change that number. Just click OK, and it does that. Once you have that, then this is a real number, 157, so I can use there a convert function. The convert function is in 2010 and 2013. What is the number? And you can change the units this way. The problem is you don't know what the units are, so I would recommend that you type the function convert. Convert. And then you say this is my number, 157M, comma, and now you get help. It tells you what are you dealing with, so you have to use one of those options. I'm going to use M for meter, comma, and I want to change it into yards. And close your function. That's the advantage if you type the function. Control-Enter. And double click it downwards. How did I get that YD in there? You guessed it already. That is a formatting issue. Then another situation of numbers. In this case, we have a problem to calculate a standard deviation. It works fine here because I have more than one situation, but here I have only one observation and the other two were not done, or I lost them, or whatever. So I get, for the standard deviation, a division error. So if I want the mean of the standard deviations, the average of E2 through E21, it will say, sorry, that's not possible because there are errors in there. So I have two solutions. I can either use the if error function or the is error function. This is the if error function. Give me the average, but not just of E2 through E21, but I need an if error situation. I'm clicking here in the formula bar on if error. If there is an error in E2 through E21, then give me double quotes, double quotes. And notice here that this gives me multiple answers. That means it has an array in the background. So whenever I make a formula like this, don't click on OK. You have to do Control-Shift-OK or Control-Shift-Enter. And it will give me the average and it will eliminate all those errors. That works great. The problem is that in older versions of Excel there is no if-error function. There is an is-error function. That makes it a little more complicated because you have to do a little more steps. I have to say average, if, and in if I use is-error. So if there is an error, E2 through E21, if that is the case, now I go back to if, then the value, if that is true, is double quotes, nothing. Don't put anything inside the double quotes. And if it's false, we are averaging E2 through E21. Again, you get multiple answers, so don't just click OK, Control-Shift-Enter. That one does the same thing, but you may have to do it a little more complicated in older versions. Then we have another situation here. This is all fine. These means are correct, but someone prefers to have zeros in there. If you like zeros in there to show that there was really no observation, be careful, for the mean will take that as an observation 0. So the mean went down dramatically. So you have to do a little more. This one is correct. In other words, we need again an array function. Here is the function. Give me the average with an if condition. If h2 through j2 equals 0, then double quotes, otherwise give me the average of that thing. Again, it's an array function, and copy the formula down. And it works. If you type literally n/a in there, that's great for the mean. It will just ignore that, so that is a good solution. But sometimes you want the function NA in there. In this cell I have equals NA open close parentheses. It puts a function in there which is basically like an error message. Why do you want to do that? Because if you want to plot these figures, then in a chart or in a graph this will be ignored. If you put 0 in there, it will go back to the 0 position like we did here. So that's why I personally like to use NA for when I want to chart or plot my data. So if you calculate the mean again, the mean is going to say there is a problem there. So I need again a function that says average. If error, I'm using the short one, but you may have to use is error, and all these things work fine. These are just situations where numbers are not what they look like. Again, if you use this a lot and you need to know more about these things, especially for science, I have a book or a CD-ROM that you can find at genesispc.com, and I also have a CD-ROM for Excel 2013 VBA that will show you how to make things like functions that we had in here. That requires a VBA.